Call to order the Kearney R-1 Board of Education meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Darlene Bailey. Here. Brian Ham. Dan Holloway.
Here.
Don Kern.
Here.
Bruce Switzer. Here. Susan Mormon. Here. Pat Kelly.
Here, one being present, entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have no public comment tonight. Entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I move that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Next is information items. Financials, Ms. Elson.
Yes, we've had some good news from our DESI counterparts, and their estimated proration factor to be increased to 95.5%. And the district is also getting some additional COVID funds. With that, we're hoping that, or forecasting that we'll be able to transfer some funds to Fund 4 this year, 800,000, and still have a fund operating balance of 21.66%.
Wow. Great news. Thank you. Excellent. Current school operations. Ms. Kopp, going to present on that? Okay.
So we had our secondary task force has reconvened over the last couple weeks. I think everyone associated with the district believes that in-person learning is ideal and best for the vast majority of our students. And we want to see our students back in class. So we reconvened the task force to start looking at how and when we might be able to transition back to full capacity. So even though right now our data still isn't great, if you compare where we are with COVID positivity, test positivity rates, and the number of COVID cases per 100,000, we're still in the red by whether you're looking at our Lake County school gating criteria or CDC guidance that just came out this last week. So even though we're not in a great spot overall, there's still hope. Like over the last few weeks, we've seen improving numbers. And so there's cause for hope, and we need to think about how and when we might transition. There are quite a few things that our task force is looking at. So we have, just a reminder, we have administrators on our task force. We have teachers on our task force. We have support staff on our task force. And we'll be working with parent voices and student voices to look at this issue as we go forward. And why do we need so many people and different stakeholders? Because it's quite complicated, really, when you start thinking about it. So some of the things that we're going to be examining and continuing to examine is where we are in the vaccination process in our community. And that's from two different areas, really. One is it's a safety issue for staff, but and that's big. But I think also another component of that, which makes the decision important, is that it has to do with our ability to have continuity of programming. So right now, when a non-vaccinated staff member is exposed, they have to quarantine for 10 days. After vaccine, if a staff member is exposed to someone that's positive for COVID, then they wouldn't have to quarantine. So there's a continuity of workforce issue that goes along with vaccination. So those are things that we're watching. We also need to look at continuity for our students. And so that's where the data on COVID case and positivity rates come in. With hybrid and reduced capacity, a positive case may result in just a handful of students school-wide that have to quarantine for 10 days because we're able to socially distance in lunchrooms, classrooms, and so forth. At full capacity, our ability to physically distance is really difficult. And so if you, and whereas it's different from the elementary, we're able to cohort groups. At the secondary level, we have students that are switching classes 7 times a day. And so one positive student when in a non-physically distanced class could then cause a quarantine of 50 students or more, depending on the activities and their transportation and where they sit in the lunchroom. And so it's not only a illness issue or health issue, but also becomes a continuity issue where it's great. I think I get to go to school 5 days a week, but if we have a high level of illness in our community, then we'll have some students that are quarantined once, twice, 3 times as we go through the end of the school year. So we're monitoring that data to ensure that it continues to improve. And then we get into some other things that I might call logistical challenges, like master scheduling changes. We would have impacts to our IEPs for students that have an IEP. We would look at, we have to consider the demand change. So students and families that are very happy with the hybrid schedule and feel like that's good. And if we went to full capacity, we need to look at what families would think that wouldn't be a good situation for their family. And there might be a demand for Connect and going 100% online for their students, and how would we respond to that from a staffing point of view. And then when we talk to students and parents, I've had the opportunity to speak with students just at different times, and it's interesting to hear what they might say. Like I've heard from, I talked to a senior the other day, and I was thinking, wow, I'm going to ask a question. I know what the answer is going to be. I'm like, you're a senior. Wouldn't it be great if you could come back to school for the last quarter of the year and be a part of the senior class? And she looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, no, I'm okay. I'm good, which is really surprising. I've talked to another senior though that was just the other side of that. Yeah, we would really love it to be back to school, even for a little while to be back full time. So we're looking at student voices. Some of our students have taken up work on their hybrid days that they're out of school, and they're taking on responsibilities with the work schedule. So there's just a lot of complexities to consider and criteria to consider as we look at when and how to change. And then and so those are some of the things that we're looking at. We have a good team together. They're doing good work. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Kaufman, leading that team, and we'll continue to work through the process to bring back any recommendations we have to make modifications to our learning modalities for youth.
Okay. Next up, let's go to action items.
Evening.
Todd, go ahead.
Good evening. Todd Goffey and Anna Draper is with me tonight from Piper Sandler. And so, as many of you know, we've been serving as the district's financial advisor for several years, helping with different financial needs, borrowing needs. And before you tonight is a resolution that authorizes the district entering into a lease purchase agreement. Last month, we went through a competitive process to initiate a direct bank placement and received just one response this time from Clay County Savings Bank. the good news is that the response that we received was a very strong response, and the rate that was proposed was quite a bit lower than what he and I had been projecting and running our numbers, so we were pleased to see that. The other very positive item about the response was it's callable at any time at the district's option. So if rates went down further, which is kind of harder to believe that that would happen, but if rates go down, you have the ability to pay this off. If you have surplus funds that are identified, you can just pay it off completely, or if you wanted to refinance it into another instrument down the road, you have that flexibility as well. So very good terms, very low interest rate. The way we've got it structured now is the district would make interest payments only for the first 3 years, and then principal would begin in 2024, and then the final maturity is 2030. Yeah. So basically a 9-year financing that's in place. Before you tonight is a resolution that was prepared by David Reed, and that's kind of the board's final authorization of this, and then pending some other actions that are forthcoming that I suspect you're familiar with, the financing would close next month, or it doesn't necessarily have to close at all. You're under no obligation to continue on if there's any issues. The other documents that the resolution approves, kind of the form of those other documents, is the lease and the base lease and a tax compliance agreement, and I think those are all maybe attached and included. Be happy to answer any questions you've got. David Reed was not able to be here tonight, so if it's a high level, easy legal question, I'll attempt that, but if it's really into the weeds, then we'll just have to defer that and get back to you on any detailed legal questions. But he and I can definitely answer any of the financial type questions that you might have.
It is somewhat unique from the leasing. It's a lease finance. It's not just like a bond. It's not, or a straight loan, just because of the nature of the school district and how it's being financed. The ultimate outcome is the same, is from a practical standpoint.
What fund does this come out of as far as the payments? Would it come out of Fund 4 or would it come out of Fund 3? Fund 4 is where you would pay out of this one?
Yes. You can do it out of operating budget.
You could do it out of.
Right. It doesn't have to be Fund 4.
Which is, I think that's what may make it attractive to refinance into a bond issue, because at that point it would be funded, it would be paid out of the fund.
I will be abstaining from voting. I am on the board. Like Annie said, it was right.
So I'll make the motion. Are you ready to entertain? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's up to you. I just wanted to know why.
All right. Move to approve the 2021 lease financing resolution as presented.
Right.
All in favor?
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Opposed?
Opposed? Abstain.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate
Thank
you
you all.
coming up. Sorry for the short.
Tonight, but
Good work.
hands up. I know it's not easy in public education nowadays.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Just what a great interest rate, and when you pair that with the value that we received in our agreed price for the Mosaic building, it really positions the district well to meet some future needs. So that's, thank you.
approval of the process coordinator.
Yes, and we are constantly and continually evaluating our changing program demands, strategically abandoning some programs, shifting staffing, and adding staffing as needed. Special education is part of that, and so Dr. Gilkey has been analyzing needs and looking at where we are as far as our staffing in special education, and has developed a proposal for moving forward that we think will equip our school district to continue to provide excellent service and even provide better service for our teachers and our students.
So for the last few years, I've watched as our number of students with disabilities have steadily increased. The growth has overwhelmed our current district level special services staff as well as our current structure. And to better address those needs, the following reorganization is being proposed. When I started this data collecting around the end of October, and at that time we had about 413 students on IEPs and dozens that we were in the middle of testing. This is a 339% increase in just the last 5 years alone. We also have 311 students who have qualified for and receive accommodations on 504 plans. So we're talking a pretty good amount of our students. So if we look at the process coordinator caseload from our peer districts, you can see a couple of things here. If you look at the number of IEP caseloads per PC, they range from 100 to about 130. You'll also notice that in Platte County, one of their differences is their process coordinators don't attend just regular IEP or 504 meetings. They deal more with the evaluation side of things, and some of their coordinators do a psych examiner so that they're able to do the IQ testing and things like that. None of our career districts have caseloads, 504 caseloads on their process coordinators. So when we take a look at the total caseloads there, we have 2 process coordinators, and if we average that out, we're looking at about 207 IEPs per PC, about 156 504s, giving us an average caseload of about 363, which is about 3 times higher than what our peer districts are currently doing. So with that in mind, I would like to propose that we add an additional process coordinator to help lower those caseloads. And with that, also a little bit of restructuring, taking COVID out of the question or out of the equation and looking at what we've done over the last couple of years and where our needs have been. We see lots of transfers coming in for multiple reasons. Jobs are a little more fluid, people moving around a little more than they used to. The foster care system, we see pushing in a lot of kids into our district. So we want to be able to better support not only our special education staff, meaning our teachers and support staff, but also our students and families. So by shifting some responsibilities around, I think we can better do that. Adding secondary level building leads would also be a key component of this. They would be provided a stipend. And at the secondary level, they would be required to attend those IEP meetings just for their buildings. They know the inner workings of their buildings. They know the staff, the parents. They build those relationships with students and can provide valuable information there. And leaving that secondary process coordinator to do a little bit different tasks. Still being involved in the compliance, but looking more towards helping with some of our re-evaluations and stuff like that have fallen solely on our one diagnostician up to this point. So with the proposed restructure, we would be going from 2 process coordinators to 3. We would split elementary is between two process coordinators. So one big building, one smaller building, and a program. So if we look at process coordinator number 1, we're looking at Dogwood and Hawthorne, which also houses our DLC, and then the Early Childhood Center. Process coordinator 2, Southview Kearney Elementary, which also houses our best program, and then our LEND students. And then process coordinator 3 would oversee the secondary leads, but would also have the below responsibility in our diagnostician, who keeps on working with the IQ testing evaluation. She does a great job training our teachers in academic testing and stuff like that. With the proposed restructure, I'm hoping that we can get some of that academic testing off the plates of our special education teachers, so that's one less thing they have to worry about. So on top of servicing kids, they also have to find the time to test any kid in their building to see if they qualify for services. And we're talking several hours there that they have to try to come up with that time. Hopefully this also opens up the elementary process coordinator to help with some of that academic testing. Still doing all of the 504 plan. It would give them more time to be in the classroom because right now our elementary process coordinator does early childhood through 5th grade. And most of our initial evaluations come from the elementary level because that's where we're hopefully catching these kids so we get them the services they need to hopefully catch them up, give them the tools that they need to be successful in school. It would also free them up to be a part of their building care teams, to be in the classroom more, doing those observations for kiddos, teachers who just need some ideas on how to handle or just a new set of eyes to see things. We would also have them working on some of the autism evals. This year, I'm currently doing those. I just got number 12 and then 13 today. They take me about 5 hours a piece. So, and that's just the autism piece of things. That's not including all the other testing and things that go on with that evaluation. Looking at our diagnostician, so far this year, she's done 72 testing evaluations, and we have multiple underway right now. She's also done 127 re-evals with new testing so far, 30 of those falling in 1 month. So while they don't take quite the time that a full evaluation does, it still takes her several hours to get that paperwork together after collaborating with the special education team, the parents. Anybody have any questions for me? I can answer.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
So a couple slides back, you're just trying to educate me is what you're going to have to do here. So the 504 caseload per PC, our peer group doesn't have. They don't have those done by their PCs. Who do they have that actually does? I mean, like, who's doing that work?
Sure. It's either a 504 coordinator
Okay.
or building counselor.
Okay. So counselors are someone that's just their only job is 504. Okay. And so are we one of the only districts in the Northland that has our PCs doing both? Yes?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Was that part of your consideration for you were reorganizing?
It was, by divvying up the buildings a little bit with elementary and then having our secondary process coordinators now having to be at all of those IEP meetings, it will free them up to do those things.
Okay.
I do think this is a temporary fix as our caseload and student population continue to grow. I would imagine that at some point in the future, we'll have to consider a 504 coordinator.
So this is phase 1 of phase 2.
There's no questions. Dr. Gilkey, would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the addition of a process coordinator and 3 secondary said building leads as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Gilkey, we appreciate your time putting this together, helping us understand it. hopefully we can provide better services with that.
Thank you for your support.
Next action item is approval of student protection resolution.
This resolution provides an opportunity for the board to make some statements about public education and enables, I think, our staff to speak on behalf of the district's position in these things too. Primarily, if you look toward the bottom, we can see 4 main points there. First, I think it reflects the belief that local control can provide accountability to educational systems that ensure that students are the first priority, something that we think is important, that what our local community resources pay for, that we have an elected board that will monitor that and make sure that that the organization is accountable for that. The second point, my phrase is public means public. So any institution receiving funds, must be required to educate all students. So selective enrollment, where an organization can choose who to enroll and not to enroll, wouldn't be an example of that. To exclude students, which that's contrary to the idea of a public service. Disenrolling students that have difficult needs or that cost more. That is not an example of a public school or public service. And so this statement would include that idea of public means public. It's therefore everyone's benefit. The third section has to do with accountability measures. We all know the burden of accountability that is placed on school districts in our state by DESE and by the federal government. And some of those we don't like. Frankly, there are a lot of work and bureaucracy to keep up with. But on the other hand, accountability is important. We're a public institution, and we need to be able to answer to and demonstrate that we're doing a good job with the resources that have been given to us for the service we're to provide. So it only seems fair and reasonable that if an institution is receiving public funds, that they would be subject to the same accountability that public schools are subject to. So that really speaks to that idea. And then finally, that we have a system for accountability in our state, and DESE and the state board are part of that system. It seems like if we're going to be putting public funds into other institutions, they should be subject to governance in the same manner that all public schools are.
Questions, comments? Now, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the student protection resolution as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Board member comments? None. Looks like we're continuing on the right path. The fact that we don't have public comment tonight. I know again, it's still tough times. We've still got to keep working. What the district's doing to educate our students, we must be doing well in the pandemic, or as well as we can, depending on how you evaluate that, what metrics would be. Appreciate the hard work.
You want to mention the video that Dr. Gar shut up as well? I think that was well done to keep our parents informed. I mean, as a board, that's what we're trying to do, so we appreciate you sending that out today. Thank you.
Next is important dates. March 3rd, early out. March 12th is the end of the third quarter. Spring break on March 15th through 19th, and our next board meeting on March 20th. because of spring. Entertain a motion regarding sunshine law.
I move for a closed session to immediately precede the regular meeting in March, including any record or vote, to discuss items and issues allowable under section 610-021 of the Missouri Sunshine Law.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Darlene Bailey,
Yes.
Brian Ham, Dan Holloway,
Yes.
John Kerr,
Yes.
Bruce Switzer. Yes. Susan Morman,
Yes?
Mark Kelly.
Yes.